After the Korean billionaire CEO cheated all night, he came home to a divorce he never expected. What happened next shocked everyone. Power, it seduces, blinds, and destroys. Some men spend their lives chasing it, stacking empires on sand, never noticing the tide creeping in. Jung-hoon Park was one of them. King of a tech empire, husband to Zora, the brilliant, elegant wife he dismissed as decorative. A woman he thought existed only to serve his ambitions. But while he was building his kingdom with one hand and caressing mistresses with the other, Zora was silently orchestrating his downfall from the shadows. The Harvard graduate he underestimated, the heiress of the dynasty he sought to conquer, the architect of his destruction. By sunrise, the man who thought he owned everything would discover he was merely a pawn in a game Zora had been playing since the day they met. A game where the queen takes all. You're watching Ari Noir Romance, where diamonds cut deeper than hearts and karma arrives in stilettos. If stories of passion, power, and calculated vengeance are your guilty pleasure, hit subscribe and join thousands who can't look away when the mighty fall at a woman's whisper. Now, let's dive into the fall of Korea's most arrogant CEO. The scent of Chanel Mademoiselle still clung to Jung-hoon Park's Brioni suit when he turned the key in the door of his penthouse at Seoul Heights, the most exclusive residential tower in Gangnam. It was 5:43 a.m. The sky was just beginning to lighten over the Seoul skyline, the first hint of dawn creeping over the Han River, as the city below remained blissfully unaware of the storm about to break in the highest echelons of Korean business. Jung-hoon expected the usual routine, the smell of freshly brewed Blue Mountain coffee from the imported Italian machine, the sound of the morning financial news playing softly from the hidden speakers, and his wife Zora waiting in the kitchen with that same patient, trusting smile he had grown to take for granted over their 7 years of marriage. That smile that never asked questions. That smile that never demanded explanations. That smile that made him feel like a god in his own home. The beautiful woman he'd married had become his favorite possession. The educated wife who impressed his business associates with her flawless manners, impeccable style, and Harvard MBA. She was the ultimate status symbol in Korean high society. Jung-hoon had paraded her at corporate events like a prized thoroughbred, watching with smug satisfaction as his rivals stared in envy at her beauty. He loved introducing her as my wife. Never by her name, never by her accomplishments. Just another acquisition in his collection of expensive things. He walked in, ready to perform his usual act. The lie was already prepared and rehearsed. An emergency video conference with Tokyo investors. A server crash at the company data center. A critical patent filing that couldn't wait. He had practiced the exhausted slump of his shoulders in the elevator mirror, perfected the concerned furrow of his brow that would sell the story of a dedicated CEO working through the night instead of a cheating husband returning from another woman's bed. But the penthouse wasn't just quiet. It was hollow. There was no coffee. There was no news. There were no staff. And on the pristine Italian marble island where his breakfast usually waited, the same meticulously prepared meal every morning that Zora had learned to prepare just for him, there was only a single black envelope with a gold wax seal bearing the logo of Kim and Associates, Korea's most prestigious law firm. Jung-hoon didn't know it yet, but his life as he knew it had ended exactly 3 hours and 27 minutes ago, while he was still tangled in silk sheets with a woman who wasn't his wife, in a hotel suite paid for with company money. While he was whispering empty promises to his young mistress, his entire world was being systematically dismantled by the woman he had so gravely underestimated, the woman whose name he often forgot to mention when introducing her to his business associates. The night before had been like so many others in Jung-hoon's carefully compartmentalized double life. The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the presidential suite at the Signal Seoul, the most expensive hotel in the country, perched at the top of Lotte World Tower. Outside, the city lights blurred into wet smears of neon across the darkened skyline. Inside, the air was warm, heavy with the scent of room service, emptied plates of Hanwoo beef and Jeju black pork, half-drunk bottles of Cristal champagne, and the lingering musk of expensive perfume and sex. Jung-hoon sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, fastening his platinum cufflinks emblazoned with his initials. They were custom-made by Cartier, a gift from Zora for their anniversary 3 months ago, a gift he hadn't even bothered to properly acknowledge. He didn't look at them as he snapped them into place. His attention was entirely on the reflection in the mirror across the room, and on the young woman still tangled in the sheets behind him. Her name was Sujin, a 23-year-old trainee at a mid-tier entertainment company, desperate to debut as a K-pop idol but constantly pushed aside for younger, more pliable girls. She was everything Zora wasn't: loud, demanding, and exciting. She cursed. She drank. She had ambition that burned like wildfire. And she knew exactly how to make Jung-hoon feel like the king of Korea when she looked at him with those calculating eyes. The youth that Sujin offered him was intoxicating. At 42, Jung-hoon had begun to feel the first whispers of mortality. The occasional gray hair at his temples. The slight softening around his jawline that even the most expensive personal trainers couldn't quite firm up. The way younger executives looked at him during meetings, measuring him, calculating how much longer he would remain at the top. Sujin made him feel immortal again. When she gazed up at him with those wide eyes, treating his most basic business advice like the wisdom of Solomon, he could forget the board meetings where his ideas were increasingly challenged. He could forget the younger executives nipping at his heels. He could forget that he wasn't the wunderkind CEO anymore, just another middle-aged man desperately clinging to power. But what Jung-hoon didn't understand, what men like him never understand, is that the hunger in those eyes wasn't desire. It was pure, unfiltered ambition. Sujin wasn't sleeping with Jung-hoon because she wanted him. She was sleeping with him because she wanted what he could give her, a shortcut in an industry that had already written her off as too old at 23. And Jung-hoon was happy to play the savior, the kingmaker, the powerful man who could make or break careers with a single phone call. It fed his ego in ways his quiet, accomplished wife never could. Zora respected him, but she didn't worship him. And for men like Jung-hoon, respect is never enough. They need adoration. They need to be gods in their own universe. They need to be the sun around which lesser planets orbit in worshipful silence. So he had built this life on lies. For the last 3 years, Jung-hoon Park, the 42-year-old CEO of Park Industries, had created a masterpiece of deception that he considered the crown jewel of his many achievements. He had the perfect home in the perfect location with the perfect wife who managed his household, impressed his global business partners with her fluent Korean and impeccable educational pedigree, and never questioned his unexplained absences or the late nights. And he had a rotating series of mistresses, with Sujin being the current favorite, who gave him the adrenaline rush he craved. The mistresses had started 3 years ago, after Park Industries went public and Jung-hoon became one of the wealthiest men in Korea. It began innocently enough, late nights with a junior marketing executive who laughed at all his jokes. Then it became a model at a corporate event who slipped him her number. Then the daughter of a business associate who needed career advice. One by one, they flowed through his life, each lasting a few months before being discarded for someone younger, someone more exciting, someone who made him feel like the powerful man he desperately needed to be. And all the while, Zora was at home, maintaining his household, hosting his dinner parties, attending charity galas on his arm, looking perfect and saying all the right things. She never complained about his late nights. She never questioned the lipstick smudges he occasionally missed when washing his collar. She was, in his mind, the perfect wife, silent, supportive, and utterly blind to his indiscretions. Jung-hoon felt untouchable. He had convinced himself that he deserved this. He worked 90-hour weeks. He had transformed his father's modest semiconductor company into a global technology powerhouse. Why shouldn't he have whatever, and whoever, he wanted on the side? Zora had her research, her board positions at international charities, and her books. She was content in her own world of high-level connections and intellectualism. He was protecting her, really. Ignorance was bliss. What spectacular arrogance. What breathtaking entitlement. And what a catastrophic miscalculation about the woman he had married. When Jung-hoon returned to his penthouse that fateful morning, the first thing he noticed beyond the silence was the stillness. It wasn't just quiet. It was the specific absence of life. The penthouse, which usually hummed with the quiet efficiency of household staff and the gentle movements of his wife, felt abandoned. "Zora?" he called out, his voice echoing off the marble and glass. The echo bounced back to him unanswered. The penthouse was cold, not freezing, but the specific sterile chill of a space that hasn't been lived in for hours. Confusion began to bloom in his chest. Where was everyone? Where was his wife? Jung-hoon moved through the penthouse with growing unease, his footsteps echoing too loudly on the heated marble floors. He checked the kitchen first, immaculate, untouched, no sign of breakfast preparation. He checked his home office, everything in perfect order. He checked the living room, and that was when he noticed the first detail that was truly wrong. The art was missing. On the main wall had hung an original Jean-Michel Basquiat, a piece that Zora had brought into their marriage, supposedly a gift from her godfather who had recognized her potential when she was just a child. The painting was gone. The wall was bare except for the faint shadow where the frame had protected the paint from years of subtle light exposure. Jung-hoon spun around, his heart beginning to race. The display cabinet in the corner, usually filled with Zora's collection of art pieces, sculptures she had told him were family treasures passed down through generations, was empty. The glass doors were closed, but the shelves were stripped bare. He ran up the curved staircase to their bedroom suite, taking the steps two at a time. The door was open. The room was immaculate, bed made with hospital corners, curtains drawn to precisely the same length, everything in perfect order. But when he yanked open the walk-in closet door, the truth hit him like a physical blow. His side of the closet was untouched, his suits, his shirts, his ties, all exactly where he had left them. He looked to the right, to Zora's side. It was decimated. The racks were bare. The shelves where her Hermes bags and Chanel accessories usually sat were empty. The shoe cabinet was stripped. Even the scent of her subtle perfume seemed to have been carefully eliminated. It wasn't just that she had packed a bag. She had erased herself from the room, from the house, from his life. Jung-hoon stood there, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. This wasn't a trip. This wasn't an errand. She knew. The realization hit him, but his arrogance immediately fought back. How could she know? He had been careful. He used a separate phone for his affairs. He paid for hotels through shell companies. Zora was just a professor's daughter from Chicago who had studied her way into Harvard, and then into Seoul's elite circles. She didn't have the capacity for this kind of investigation. Or so he thought. This is the delusion that powerful men like Jung-hoon carry with them, that the women they underestimate are as blind as they are presumed to be. They mistake silence for ignorance. They mistake patience for weakness. They mistake dignity for lack of passion. His eyes landed on the nightstand on her side of the bed. It was empty except for two things. Her wedding ring, the flawless 5-carat diamond he had bought her to show off to his business associates, and the black envelope. Jung-hoon walked over to the nightstand. His legs felt heavy, like he was wading through concrete. He picked up the ring first. It felt cold and lifeless in his palm, like the marriage it represented. He dropped it into his pocket. He reached for the envelope. It was heavy, made of expensive paper, the kind used for legal documents that are meant to last for generations. The gold wax seal bore the logo of Kim and Associates, the law firm that represented Korea's oldest and wealthiest families, the Lees of Samsung, the Chungs of Hyundai. They cost millions just to take a case. He broke the seal and pulled out a stack of documents. The first page wasn't a handwritten letter pleading for explanations. It wasn't a tear-stained note asking why or begging him to come back. It was a legal filing, printed on heavyweight paper with an embossed header. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Petitioner, Zora Wilson Park. Respondent, Jung-hoon Park. Jung-hoon laughed. It was a dry, incredulous sound in the empty room. "You have got to be kidding me," he whispered. He flipped the page and then the next. Attached to the divorce petition were photos. High-resolution, time-stamped, geotagged photos. Jung-hoon fell onto the bed, the mattress barely yielding under his weight. There was a photo of him and Soo-jin at dinner 3 weeks ago at a private room in Mingle's restaurant. A photo of them entering the Signal Seoul last night. A photo of them kissing in the private garden of the hotel where he thought no one could see. A photo of him handing Soo-jin a blue Tiffany bag containing diamond earrings charged to his company credit card. But it wasn't just Soo-jin. There were photos of Young-hoon with other women, the model from 6 months ago, the junior executive from last year, the daughter of the business associate from the year before that. It was a catalog of his infidelities, meticulously documented, dated, and annotated with clinical precision. The timestamps were precise. The angles were professional. These weren't taken by a jealous friend with an iPhone. These were taken by a private investigator. A very expensive one. How? Young-hoon whispered, his voice cracking. Where did she get the money for this? Zora had no income of her own that he was aware of. He gave her a monthly allowance, generous of course, but tracked. Every credit card purchase she made sent a notification to his phone. He controlled the finances. He controlled the accounts. He was the CEO. He knew where everyone went. Or so he believed. Another delusion. Another fatal miscalculation. Young-hoon flipped further into the stack of papers, his hands now shaking visibly. Behind the photos was a letter on the letterhead of Kim and Associates. He began to read the letter, signed by senior partner Kim Jae-wook himself. Dear Mr. Park, please be advised that I represent your wife, Mrs. Zora Wilson Park, in the matter of your divorce. By the time you read this, Mrs. Park will have vacated the marital residence at Chable Heights, Penthouse A. As you are aware, the deed to this property is held in the name of Park Young-hoon. However, we would like to draw your attention to Clause 17, Section C of the prenuptial agreement you signed 7 years ago. Young-hoon frowned. The prenup. He remembered it clearly. He had insisted on it. He was the rising CEO with a family company. She was the brilliant but ordinary professor's daughter from Chicago with nothing to her name but academic achievements. He wanted to protect his assets. He had made her sign it without letting her lawyer review it properly. Or so he thought. What Young-hoon failed to understand was that Zora had read every word of that document. With her Harvard Law School training, she probably understood its implications better than he did. And more importantly, someone else's lawyers had added clauses he never bothered to read, assuming they were standard boilerplate inserted by her father's small-town attorney. He continued reading. The infidelity clause inserted at the request of the bride's family states that in the event of proven adultery by either party, all assets acquired during the marriage shall be subject to equitable distribution regardless of title holder. Furthermore, the intellectual property rights to the AI-driven semiconductor technology patented during your marriage, which lists Mrs. Park as co-developer, shall revert fully to her control. Young-hoon stopped reading. The room spun around him. The patents. The cornerstone of Park Industries' market value. The revolutionary AI processing technology that was the centerpiece of the upcoming merger with Wilson Global Technologies. Zora had helped develop the early algorithms years ago, before they were married. He had insisted her name be on the patents for tax purposes, creating a family trust that he controlled. It was a paper arrangement only. Zora had never shown any interest in the business side. Or so he thought. More delusions. More catastrophic miscalculations. Young-hoon scrambled for his phone. He needed his corporate lawyer. He needed to call his vice president and childhood friend, Lee Tae-jun. His fingers trembled as he dialed. Tae-juna, he said when the call connected, unable to keep the panic from his voice. Listen, Zora has gone crazy. She filed for divorce. She has some absurd lawyer making claims about the patents. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Tae-jun. Young-hoon pressed. Young-hoon. Tae-jun's voice was cold and formal. It wasn't the voice of his friend and right-hand man for 20 years. It was the voice of a stranger. Tae-jun, what's wrong? You need to check your email. The board just finished an emergency meeting. Meeting? What meeting? It's 6:30 in the morning. Zora called it at 2 a.m. Or rather, her legal team did. What does Zora have to do with the board? Young-hoon shouted, standing up and pacing the room. She's just my wife. The words hung in the air, revealing so much about how Young-hoon viewed the woman he had married. Just my wife. As if she were an accessory, a possession, a decorative object in his carefully curated life. As if the Harvard MBA and law degree were merely attractive frames for the real artwork. Her beauty on his arm at corporate events. You really didn't know, did you? Taejun said, his voice dropping to a whisper. You really never looked into her family background. She's a professor's daughter from Chicago. Her father is a professor, yes, but her mother, Young-hoon. Her mother's maiden name was Wilson. The name hit Young-hoon like a physical blow. The Wilson family, founders of Wilson Global Technologies. The very company Park Industries was about to merge with. One of the most powerful tech conglomerates, with branches in 17 countries and a market capitalization larger than Park Industries by a factor of 3. She never told me. She wanted to be loved for herself. Young-hoon, she told the board everything this morning. Why do you think the merger terms were so favorable to us? Why do you think Wilson Global was willing to let a smaller company like ours have equal representation on the new board? Young-hoon went pale, the blood draining from his face as the pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. That was a strategic decision based on our technology portfolio, he insisted weakly. That was Zora, Taejun said flatly. She owns 26% of Wilson Global through her family trust. She's been the bridge between the companies this entire time. She was sent here years ago to evaluate your company for acquisition. The truth crashed over Young-hoon like a tsunami. Zora hadn't married him by chance. She hadn't been a naive professor's daughter who fell for his charm at that tech conference in San Francisco. She had been on a mission. While he thought he was conquering a beautiful trophy wife, she had been assessing him, evaluating his company, planning for this merger all along. What he had thought was the story of a powerful Korean CEO marrying a beautiful woman was actually the story of a Wilson family heiress making a strategic business acquisition. He hadn't been the hunter. He had been the prey. Young-hoon fell back onto the bed. The phone slipped from his sweaty fingers. She fired you, Young-hoon? Taejun said, his voice coming tinny from the floor. Effective immediately. The board voted unanimously after seeing the evidence. Security is waiting for you at the office. Don't come in. Your access credentials have already been deactivated. Young-hoon stared at the wall where the painting used to be. He had cheated on his wife. He thought he was playing a game he couldn't lose. He thought she was weak. He thought she was naive. But Zora hadn't just left him. She had erased him. And the black envelope on the bed still had more pages. Young-hoon sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, though only minutes had passed. The revelation that his quiet, scholarly wife was the daughter of the Wilson family, the silent bridge that had facilitated the merger that would have made him one of the most powerful CEOs in Korea, was a pill too bitter to swallow. But as his eyes drifted back to the black envelope, he realized the horror wasn't over. There were more papers. He had stopped at the letter explaining the prenuptial agreement, but the stack was thick. His hands, now trembling uncontrollably, turned the next page. It was a spreadsheet, a forensic accounting spreadsheet. At the top, it read unauthorized expenditures and misappropriation of company funds, 2021 to 2024. Young-hoon's throat went dry. He felt a phantom tightening around his neck, more constrictive than any tie he had ever worn. He had been careful, or so he thought. When he took Soo-jin to Jeju Island last month, he had expensed it as a strategic planning retreat. When he bought the diamond bracelet for the model he dated before Soo-jin, he had buried it under client relationship management. When he renovated a luxury apartment in Abgyeojong for his first mistress 3 years ago, he had disguised it as an executive housing investment. He was the CEO. He approved the expenses. He controlled the audits. Who was going to catch him? The answer was staring him in the face. Zora. The spreadsheet was terrifyingly detailed. It didn't just list the amounts. It listed the locations, the dates, and the true nature of each expense, annotated in precise handwriting that he recognized as Zora's elegant script, the same handwriting that had signed birthday cards and left him loving notes in his briefcase. Item 73. The Shilla Hotel Presidential Suite. Date: March 15th. Amount: 7,500,000 Korean wons. Claimed: client meeting with Daewoo Electronics. Actual: overnight stay with Soo-jin Kim. Room service for two, champagne, spa treatment. Item 94. Bulgari Seoul. Date: April 22nd. Amount: 17,300,000 Korean wons. Claimed: executive gifts for overseas partners. Actual: diamond bracelet delivered to Soo-jin Kim's apartment in Apgujeong. Item 127. Apgujeong Villa 303. Date: February 3 present. Amount: 1,200,000 Korean wons monthly. Claimed: corporate housing for visiting executives. Actual: apartment for mistress Soo-jin Kim, including utilities, furnishings, and security deposit. Item 156. Private dining room at Pierre Gagnaire. Date: December 12th. Amount: 4,300,000 Korean wons. Claimed: client entertainment. Actual: dinner with Mistress Lee Min-ji. No business associates present. Item 189. Tiffany and Company. Date: January 28th. Amount: 22,600,000 Korean wons. Claimed: corporate gifts for Japanese investors. Actual: diamond earrings and necklace set for Mistress Soo-jin Kim, delivered to hotel room at Park Hyatt. The list went on and on. Jung-hoon scanned through dozens of entries, hundreds of millions of won. Year after year of systematic fraud and embezzlement, all to finance his extramarital affairs and lavish lifestyle. Each entry meticulously documented, cross-referenced with bank statements, credit card receipts, and time-stamped photographs. And at the bottom of the document, a sum was circled in thick red marker: 1,742,608,500 Korean wons, approximately 1.45 million US dollars. Beneath the number was a photocopy of a legal statute. Article 347 of the Korean Criminal Code. Embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. She's going to send me to jail, Jung-hoon whispered to the empty room. She's not just divorcing me. She's going to prosecute me. He scrambled off the bed. He needed liquid cash right now. If they were coming for him, if the company lawyers were already drafting the criminal complaint, he needed to secure his position. He needed a lawyer who wasn't afraid of the Wilson family. He fumbled for his wallet and pulled out his black Samsung Card Infinite, the card that had no limit, the card that made him feel like royalty in every luxury establishment in Seoul. He grabbed his phone and dialed the number on the back of the card for the VIP concierge service. He needed to book a suite at the Park Hyatt. He needed a safe place to think. Welcome to Samsung Card VIP Concierge. Please hold for your dedicated representative. Jung-hoon paced the room, sweating through his expensive shirt. Pick up, pick up, pick up. Mr. Park. A human voice, polite but strained. This is Ji-yeon. How may I assist you today? Ji-yeon. I need to book the diplomatic suite at the Park Hyatt. For a week. Starting immediately. There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable silence filled with the sound of keyboard clicking. I'm sorry, Mr. Park, Ji-yeon said, her voice dropping professionally. I am unable to process that transaction. What do you mean, unable? It's a hotel room. Charge it. Now. Sir, your account has been flagged. Flagged for what? Fraud? It's me. I'm authorizing it. No, sir. It's not a fraud flag. The account has been suspended per a legal order received this morning regarding the assets of Park Jung-hoon. Jung-hoon froze. That's a credit card. It's my credit card. It's a corporate liability card linked to Park Industries, sir. We received a suspension order from the Seoul Central District Court. All credit lines under your name have been suspended pending the investigation and She hesitated. The pending criminal investigation. Jung-hoon hung up. He didn't say goodbye. He just dropped the phone onto the plush carpet. They had frozen him out. He had no cash. He had 150,000 Korean wons, about $125, in his wallet. He ran to the wall safe behind the bookshelf in his study. He spun the dial. Right 35, left 15, right 40. The safe clicked open. Empty, of course. Zora was the one who had insisted on changing the combination every quarter for security. She knew the combination. Inside the safe, where he usually kept a stack of emergency cash and his spare passport, there was only a sticky note. Evidence submitted to prosecutor's office. She had taken his passport. She had taken the cash. She had left him nothing but her initials, not even her full name. It was the ultimate dismissal, the kind he had subjected her to for years at corporate events when he introduced her simply as my wife. Jung-hoon let out a roar of frustration, slamming his fist into the wall. Pain shot up his arm, but the physical pain was a relief compared to the walls closing in on his mind. He was trapped in his own penthouse in his own life. Wait, Soo-jin. Soo-jin didn't know yet. Soo-jin thought he was the powerful CEO of Park Industries, and Soo-jin had an apartment in Gangnam. A small place, sure, but a place to hide, and he had bought her plenty of jewelry. If worse came to worst, they could pawn the diamond earrings he gave her last month. Those were worth at least 20 million won. He needed to get to Soo-jin. He needed to spin this. He would tell her, what? That it was a misunderstanding? That Zora was a vindictive, jealous wife? Yes, that would work. Soo-jin hated Zora. Soo-jin would take his side. Soo-jin had always rolled her eyes when he mentioned his wife. That cold woman, she would say with a sneer. So stuck up, so proper. I bet she's frigid in bed. And Jung-hoon would laugh, pleased with the comparison that made him feel virile and desired. He would nod and agree, betraying the woman who had built his home and supported his career with casual cruelty that he thought would never come back to haunt him. He grabbed his overnight bag from the trip he never took to Tokyo. He had to leave before the police came. He ran down the stairs, ignoring the ghost quiet of the penthouse, and sprinted to the private elevator. He punched the button for the parking garage. The elevator didn't move. He punched it again. Nothing. A message appeared on the digital display. Access revoked. Please contact building management. No. Jung-hoon slammed his fist against the control panel. His private elevator access had been deactivated. He would have to use the common elevator, walk through the lobby like a commoner, like the people he had always looked down upon from the tinted windows of his chauffeur-driven Bentley. He took out his phone and dialed Soo-jin. Soo-jin picked up on the third ring. Jung-hoon. Her voice sounded annoyed. I thought you were going home to your wife. Why are you calling me? It's risky. Soo-jin, listen to me? Jung-hoon said, trying to keep the panic out of his voice and failing miserably. Something has happened. Zora. She knows. She knows everything. She filed for divorce. She kicked me out of the company. There was a silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shock. It was calculation. She found out about us. So you're free now? That's good, right? You said you wanted to leave her. Yes, exactly. I'm free, Jung-hoon said, latching onto the narrative. But listen, baby, it's messy. She's trying to freeze my accounts. She's being vindictive. I need a place to stay for a few days until my lawyers straighten this out. I'm coming to your place. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. My place is really small, Jung-hoon, Soo-jin said slowly. It's just a one-bedroom. It's just for a day or two. Look, I'll make it up to you. Once the divorce settles, I'll have my half of the assets. We're talking billions, Soo-jin. We can go to Paris. We can get that penthouse in Cheongdam you wanted. Your half of the assets? Soo-jin repeated. I thought you said she signed a prenup? She did, but look, it's complicated. I just need you to call me a taxi. My car is having issues. Jung-hoon. Sujin's voice was suddenly very sharp. I'm looking at Naver News right now. Young-hoon's stomach dropped. What? You're on the front page. Park Industries CEO removed due to financial misconduct and personal scandal. There's a picture of us. From last night. Going into the Signal. Sujin, that's just tabloid garbage. They're trying to smear me. I built that company. It also says, she continued, ignoring him, that the company is conducting an audit of all expenses approved by you. Young-hoon, did you put my apartment deposit on the company card? Young-hoon hesitated. I categorized it as talent development for a potential brand ambassador. You idiot, she screamed. They're going to come after me. They're going to make me pay it back or press charges. I don't have that kind of money. Sujin, calm down. We'll fix it. I just need what? You're broke? Young-hoon, you're fired. You're probably going to jail. I didn't sign up for this. Do you know what this will do to my career? I was supposed to debut next year. I have you. We love each other. Remember? You said I was the only man who understood you. He was desperate now, clinging to the last person he thought might still be in his corner. The irony was crushing. He was now begging for loyalty from a woman he had never intended to be loyal to. He was asking for commitment from someone he saw as disposable, as temporary, as a pleasant distraction from his real life. I loved the lifestyle, Young-hoon, she snapped. I loved the dinners and the gifts and the fact that you were going to make me a star. I didn't sign up to visit you in prison. I didn't sign up to be broke and blacklisted. Sujin, please. I have nobody else. Don't come here, she said. If you come here, I'm calling the police. I can't be seen with you. I have a career to think about. My company already called. They're distancing themselves from the scandal. I'm deleting your number. Don't call me again. Click. Young-hoon stared at the phone. He had just been discarded as easily as he had discarded others throughout his life. The women he had used and abandoned, the employees he had fired without a second thought, the business associates he had betrayed for marginal gains. They all had faces now, and they all wore Sujin's expression of cold dismissal. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had traded a loyal wife for a mercenary. And the moment the money ran dry, the mercenary had done exactly what mercenaries do. She switched sides to save herself. He was alone, truly alone. But he couldn't stay here. He had to move. He took the common elevator down to the lobby, his head bowed in shame. The security guards who had bowed to him just hours ago now looked straight through him, their faces carefully blank. News traveled fast in luxury buildings. He walked through the lobby, dragging his overnight bag. The concierge, who used to scramble to assist him, suddenly became very busy with paperwork. The doorman who had known him for years pretended not to see him. Young-hoon reached the street and looked left, then right. He didn't even know which way to go. His driver had always taken him everywhere. He hadn't ridden the subway in 15 years. He didn't know which bus lines ran through this neighborhood. He was a foreigner in his own city, a helpless child in an adult's body, suddenly thrust into a world he had insulated himself from with layers of privilege and wealth. He started walking toward Gangnam Station, a 20-minute walk in his handmade leather shoes that were already pinching his feet. Each step was a new humiliation, a new lesson in the life of ordinary people that he had forgotten existed. As he walked, a black Mercedes with tinted windows drove past him, heading toward the Chable Heights building. It didn't slow down. Young-hoon turned to watch it. It turned into the private entrance of his building. A second Mercedes followed. Then a police car. Young-hoon's heart hammered. They were coming for the penthouse. Perhaps for him. He ducked behind a large planter outside a coffee shop, watching from a distance. The vehicles stopped in front of his building. The doors opened. First, 2 uniformed officers stepped out. Then, a man in a perfectly tailored suit, Kim Jae-wook, the famous attorney. And then, from the back of the first Mercedes, a woman stepped out. It was Zora. Young-hoon gasped. She looked different. She wasn't wearing the tasteful, understated designer clothes she usually wore around him. She was wearing a stunning white power suit that emphasized her beauty, sky-high Christian Louboutin stilettos that clicked on the pavement, and dark Celine sunglasses. Her hair, which she usually kept in conservative styles, was now styled in a way that framed her face perfectly. She had shed the understated persona she wore as Mrs. Park and stepped fully into her identity as Zora Wilson, heiress and executive. She looked taller. She looked confident. She looked like the executive she had always been trained to be. She stood by the car looking up at the building. She didn't look sad. She didn't look like a grieving wife. She looked like a general surveying a conquered territory. Jung-hoon felt a surge of anger. That was his home. She was mocking him. He forgot about the police. He forgot about the restraining orders. He forgot about the prison time. He just wanted to scream at her. He wanted to hurt her the way she was hurting him. He dropped his bag and ran back toward the building entrance. "Zora!" he screamed. "Zora!" The police officers turned instantly, hands dropping to their holsters. Kim Jae-wook didn't flinch. He just adjusted his glasses. Zora turned slowly. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry. They were cold, hard flint. "Hold it right there!" one of the officers shouted, stepping between Jung-hoon and Zora. Jung-hoon stopped, panting, his chest heaving. He was 15 meters away from her. "You snake!" Jung-hoon screamed. "You planned this. You set me up." Zora stared at him. She didn't shout back. She didn't cry. She just tilted her head slightly, as if observing an insect under a microscope. "I didn't set you up, Jung-hoon," she said. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried across the distance with perfect composure. "I just let you be yourself. You did the rest. I made you," Jung-hoon yelled, desperate to regain some power. "I made you my wife. I gave you status. You were nothing but a professor's daughter until I married you." Zora laughed. It was a genuine laugh, but it lacked any warmth. "Jung-hoon," she said, pity dripping from her voice. "My mother built the company you were trying to merge with. My family funded your father's startup 30 years ago through a blind investment. I didn't need you to give me status. I needed a partner. But you were too busy trying to be a big man to notice who you were actually married to." The words struck him like physical blows. 30 years ago? His father's startup? The Wilson family had been in their lives all along? Couldn't be true. His father would have told him. But then he remembered his father's stories about the mysterious investor who had saved the company in its darkest hour. The angel who had appeared just as they were about to go bankrupt. The investor whose identity had been hidden behind layers of holding companies and legal entities. "You're lying," he shouted, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. Zora shook her head sadly. "Check your family records, Jung-hoon. Ask your mother about the Wilson Foundation grant that paid for your education at Stanford. Nothing in your life was ever truly yours. You've been part of our portfolio for decades. I was sent to evaluate whether you were worth keeping in the family." She turned to the lawyer. "Jae-wook, give him his things." Kim Jae-wook reached into the car and pulled out a small plastic shopping bag. He walked halfway between them and placed it on the ground. "What is that?" Jung-hoon sneered. "Your medicine," Zora said. "The blood pressure pills you take every morning. And your phone charger." "I'm not heartless. I want my home, Zora. You can't just kick me out." "Actually," Kim Jae-wook spoke up, his voice smooth and precise, "we can. The court order was issued at 5:30 this morning. You are currently trespassing on private property." "Trespassing?" Jung-hoon sputtered. The lawyer nodded to the policeman. The cop stepped forward. "Mr. Park, you need to leave the premises immediately, or you will be arrested for criminal trespass and violation of a protective order." Jung-hoon looked at Zora. He looked for a shred of the woman who used to wake up early to make sure his suits were perfectly pressed. He looked for the woman who had stood behind him at every company milestone. She was gone. Or maybe she had never really existed. Maybe that version of Zora was just a mask she wore while completing her family's mission. "Zora, please." Jung-hoon's voice broke. He realized the anger wasn't working. He He tried begging. I have nowhere to go. My cards don't work. Sujin abandoned me. I have nothing. Zora looked at him. For a second, her expression softened. Young-hoon felt a spark of hope. You have your freedom, Young-hoon, she said softly. That's what you wanted, isn't it? To be free of your boring wife. To live the exciting life with your young girlfriends. She put her sunglasses back on. Go live it. She turned around and walked into the building, her building, and the glass doors slid shut behind her with a soft whoosh that somehow sounded like the final note of a funeral dirge. Move along, sir, the officer said, hand on his baton. Young-hoon grabbed the plastic bag. He grabbed his overnight bag and turned around. He walked down the street, past the luxury boutiques where he used to buy gifts for his mistresses, past the restaurants where he had dined with business associates who now wouldn't take his calls. He reached the main avenue. The rain began to fall again. Cold, hard rain. He started walking. He didn't know where. He just knew he was walking away from the life he had destroyed. The most brutal revenge isn't taking everything from someone. It's making them irrelevant in the story they thought they were writing. Zora didn't just take Young-hoon's company. She erased his very existence from the narrative of success. Was this calculated takedown justice served cold? Or was it too merciless even for a man who betrayed everything? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this tale of high-stakes betrayal and ice-cold revenge sent chills down your spine, hit that subscribe button and join the Ari Noir Romance family. Turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly dose of dark passion and calculated revenge from the world's most exclusive circles. Remember, in the game of love and power, always watch the quiet ones. They're the ones taking notes. See you next Friday with another story that will keep you up at night.